All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Vector Accelerator Podcast. I'm Scott Schimmel, one of the co-founders on the team, and I'm so glad to have one of the people that's in the Hall of Fame of Vector Accelerator. That's Dr. Evie Trevino. Dr. Evie Trevino, welcome to the show. And would you please give us a background for what the doctor means in your name?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me. Super excited to be on here with you. Dr. Evie Muilenburg Trevino, the longest, most complicated last
I
name.
missed part of that. Sorry.
I am a quantitative psychologist. Another way to say that is I'm a research psychologist. And
Yeah.
I've spent 20 years studying positive psychology and specifically hope and how to help people live flourishing lives.
Okay.
There you go.
So
Short
when
and
I
sweet.
first, that's great. When I first was introduced to you, I don't remember 3 or 4 years ago. It's always kind of a blur during COVID years. I remember hearing like, okay, she studies and researches hope, and I was a little bit like, okay, cool. What does that mean? So what do you mean when
Yeah.
you say you study hope?
Yeah. Hope is a science. Like you, the first time I heard the word hope, I rolled my eyes because being a quantitative psychologist, I am all about numbers and it sounded too fluffy and it sounded too good to be true.
Yeah.
But over the past many years that I have studied hope, I assure you it is grounded in science, it's grounded in empirical evidence,
Mm.
and more importantly, it is one of the best predictors of well being and which is really what I've had a heart for helping individuals, particularly individuals at risk, individuals at risk populations, individuals essentially who've been through hard things or done
Mm.
hard work. How do we help those people learn to thrive? And so hope is the mechanism to help individuals learn how to thrive.
What is it? I don't think I've ever asked you this way. What is it about hard things that people experience that depletes their hope? What happens to somebody if they've had trauma, tragedy, loss, prolonged stress that just beats them down over time? What happens to somebody as it relates to hope?
Sure, that's a great question. Let me start with the definition of hope. Hope is the belief the future is bright and I have the power to make it happen. So let me
Yeah.
unpack that for you. So hope is the belief the future is bright. So this positive outlook, but we don't stop there because if we stop there, it'd be a passive statement. But hope is active, and I have a role to play in making it happen. I have the power to make it happen. And really that puts the person in the driver's seat
Mm.
for meeting their goals. And when difficult things happen, it's hard to look at the future and say, hey, things are going to turn out great.
Yeah.
Because sometimes life teaches us that it doesn't matter what I do, man, I can't find
Yeah.
success. I can't beat this thing. I can't meet my goals. Um, and in order to meet some goal, an individual needs to have both pathways and the willpower to do so. The pathways are the mental strategies towards goals. And so we have found that lower hope people have a hard time identifying multiple goals. And you may have an individual who at one point was a higher hope person because of chronic stress,
Mhm.
really difficult experiences, the problem solving piece that is required to identify strategies towards a goal, it's limited. Secondly, in addition to the pathways, those mental strategies to meeting goals, individuals need the willpower to also do that.
Yeah.
And uh, common saying, where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Right.
Especially in for high hopers or you know people who are kind of pull yourself together. But that's a fallacy. So willpower is finite, and while
Mm.
over time we can grow it, we know that chronically stressful environments drain us of our willpower. And once our willpower is gone, it it's depleted.
Mm.
And so individuals who are lower in willpower have a harder time maintaining mental energy to their goals.
Yeah.
And because both pathways and willpower are needed to meet their goals, individuals who face prolonged traumatic or difficult events, we see that they have a hard time looking at the future positively They have a hard time
Mm.
identifying pathways and good, strong pathways, and they have a hard time maintaining their willpower towards their goals.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. And what I'm thinking about when you're sharing that is for a veteran who separates from the military and puts their head down and starts putting a resume together. They maybe reluctantly get on LinkedIn. They start looking at job postings, job boards. They start sending in their resume. They start applying. Maybe they even get some calls back to set up interviews. Maybe they even go on interviews. But time and time again, day in and day out, the response is either no, you're not qualified, or B, you're overqualified, or C, just like nothing. You get kind of nothing there. And then the offers that you get just seem like really beneath you. So given that context, there's a little case study. How does hope speak into that?
Sure. Um, One of the things I love that Vector Accelerator does is it comes alongside veterans and it helps them discover who they are now in the civilian world, because that feels pretty differently
Yeah.
to when they were active in the military. And so comes alongside these individuals and helps them rediscover who they are. And with relationships, we know that
Mm,
hope happens in connection with other people.
mm,
And while they're discovering who they are, what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, as they begin to look for new employment,
yeah.
new opportunities, they can, you know, fine tune what they know about themselves, and they can communicate, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. And as they go through that process, they have greater success in, putting together, marketing themselves, if you will. This is who I am, and they find greater success in finding employment.
Yeah. That's so for years before Vector Accelerator existed, this experience, this curriculum, and this process has lived inside the first phase of the Honor Foundation, a transition program for Special Operations Committee. And back in the day when it first started, before there were, I think there's 10 campuses now for the Honor Foundation all over the United States. I used to be able to go in and in the classroom, oftentimes for cohorts, I was in there for 6 sessions and 3 to 4 hours per session. So a lot of time. There's a lot of time where with about a dozen transitioning veterans are walking through this process of exploring their story of who they are, their identity, their purpose, all that stuff. And I would be able to say with such confidence, this works. They would be able to say, oh yeah, this works. This is different. But when it came time to like actually explain how it worked or in what ways it worked, that's where we were at a loss. And for instance, we could like qualitatively see the difference between someone that started the course and was and just asking them, tell me about yourself. You would hear someone, and this is not to be critical, but you'd hear someone kind of like fumble and stumble and tell details that don't matter or tell details you shouldn't share and kind of all over the map. And then walking them through this process by the end, even within a few weeks, you ask that same person again, tell me about yourself. And they would actually be able to look you in the eye and tell you the story that wasn't just clear and coherent. It was compelling. It's like, this is who I am. This is where I'm going. This is the kind of person I want to be. And this is what I'm looking for. So again, we could kind of say, well, obviously this works, but it wasn't until meeting you that you were kind of like, well, I can actually help you understand in what ways it does work. So maybe you can speak to what we've done with Vector Accelerator, what you've done to help us measure, because the traditional metrics are, did you get a job? Does it pay well? And I don't know, that's about it. So what did you do with Vector and what do we have now because of your system?
Sure. Good questions. Oh goodness, it's been a while since I started working with Vector,
Yeah.
and I remember initially doing a deep dive into your program, got all your materials, and I uh, was pretty impressed with what I saw. And so whenever I'm fast forwarding, so I'll come back.
Yeah.
But whenever went through the evaluation piece and had the data, and when I delivered the report, I wasn't surprised at the results that we saw, which
Mm,
were profoundly positive. And in the
that's
process
good.
of the evaluation, we, I said, what are your outcomes? And all those things that you listed. And so we
Yeah.
talked about what is the pathways to helping those individual find those. And so in the course of, figuring out, hey, what do we want to measure? What are the most important outcomes? We looked at sense of purpose, relationships, engaged citizenship. We looked at hope. We looked at resiliency. We looked at life satisfaction. We looked at a whole slew of things.
Mm,
And in the pilot study, you never know what you're going to find.
yeah.
But
Right.
you're the
We're like sitting there
findings
with
from
fingers
the
crossed, like, please work.
I wasn't surprised at all. In fact, I don't know if you remember whenever I got the data and I was like, yes, let me go. Let me nerd out and go
Yeah.
analyze this data. So really saw your outcomes, like all of them were essentially met. Um, Regarding hope, it's my favorite construct.
Yeah.
72% of veterans over that 5 weeks, give or
Yeah.
take, course of time, 72% of veterans had an increase in hope, which is a profound difference. And because we know that hope has such incredible outcomes associated with it,
Yeah.
it's just so important. um, Improved sense of purpose, those relationships, improved citizenship behaviors, all were statistically significant. Um, and so, even from that very beginning pilot study, just saw all these, you know, positive outcomes, associated with real change in these individuals' lives. That,
Mm,
I see numbers, and I'm the only statistician I know who sees these numbers, analyzes, and it brings tears to my eyes because I
yeah.
know that means life's changed.
Wow. Yeah. Everybody seems to think their baby is the prettiest baby in the world. And for you to come objectively into this baby that we've birthed, this Vector Accelerator, and say, no, 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 objectively, it's a really good baby. I think for what you've been able to do from that lens has given those of us who've been a part of this founding team, not just confidence, but like it almost feels like a mandate. If not only do we think this is a need and a problem to solve, but you're saying this actually solves it. So what are we going to do to make sure that we can get this in front of everybody? Which just and you and I haven't caught up on this particularly recently, but one thing we're trying to do is connect with other veteran service organizations, other organizations that are already working with veterans who do like amazing work, whether it's on kind of skill bridge, giving people tastes of employment, or the more traditional like career tools, LinkedIn, resume writing, all that sort of thing, or helping kind of coach them into employment. Like we're seeing it, when a veteran goes through Vector first, before that, that it's actually, like you're saying, it has all these downstream effects on them. And that's given us, again, a lot of like confidence. That's something we want to do. And it's going to be kind of a long road if we're just trying to find veteran at a time, word of mouth. And but if we can find some organizations that say, no, we have, whether it's dozens or hundreds or even thousands of veterans that we connect to, then that really, that's something that we want to do. I'm wondering if for a second you could kind of do a little role playing with me. I don't mean it like you have to act, but okay, so you're my friend. I'm a transitioning veteran and I'm feeling discouraged and stuck. Back to that same scenario of like, I just keep putting things out there and I'm just getting either ghosted or no's all over the map. And I've been going at it for a while. I don't lack sort of like the willpower side. What is the hope response to that? How do
Yeah.
you as a friend support me through the lens of hope?
Yeah. Well, it is admirable that you have this goal that you're tenaciously working toward, and just you're not seeing the outcome that you want to see. And so Accelerator will help you find the pathways to meeting your goal, short and sweet. And, there's a lot of stressors that come with, coming back into civilian life. And so, you may start out strong, but it is frustrating. And so, the relationships at Vector are key in helping
Mhm.
to maintain willpower, because we're all human. We're
Yep.
not machines. We're flesh and blood. And so we were meant to live, alongside other people. And so Vector provides that relationship piece
Mhm.
to help make sure that your willpower is sustained, and that it really walks you through the process to building those pathways to your
Yep.
goals.
Yeah, and I'm thinking we have now 3 times a week what we call asthma chats, these live video meetups for folks going through the program to come and share and connect and kind of problem solve with each other and get some empathy, get some support. And that's what I find is the folks that show up will often give each other the encouragement. Like, no, dude, I was in your shoes 2 months ago. Trust me, keep going. But they also give each other ideas. Like, have you tried this? Have you thought about that? Do you know this person? That's one piece. The other piece is we highly encourage people as they go through this kind of guided deep dive into your life, self-reflection, journaling, introspection, to every single time you get through like one of the modules, there's 10 chapters, to share your thoughts out loud with somebody that you know and you trust. And there's something about that give and take that helps you clarify what you're thinking. It helps you get a different perspective. So that's another piece. But the third piece that particularly Joe Lara talks a lot about is this idea of 50 cups of coffee, which is a phrase that was really developed in the Honor Foundation years ago. And the encouragement is it's not like precise necessarily. 50 is a placeholder to say a lot. Go and seek to have conversations with people, whether it is sitting down for a cup of coffee or a beer or a Zoom call. And through that, what you're able to do, I think, is hear all these different perspectives that broadens your aperture for what's possible, which speaks directly to the part of hope science of kind of discovering your pathways, like exploring different pathways. You don't know what you don't know. And so the quickest way to figure out how to know it is to sit down with somebody and get their input and get their advice. And that can certainly feel vulnerable. It can feel humbling for sure. And it can also feel really uncomfortable, really stressful to have someone give you advice. And I know for me, I'd say 2/3 of the time I get advice like that. It's not that helpful. It's honestly, it's like, nah, you didn't really listen to me, or that's not something I want to do. So you kind of have to, it's not one for one in my experience. You don't just sit down with people, have cups of coffee, then you get all this insight. It's a little bit like sifting through to figure out where things are. But what I found is if you just kind of keep going with it, the little nuggets, the gold dust starts to emerge, and you see these things that you had no concept of before. And I know for me professionally, I mean, I certainly had no, I didn't even know this sort of thing existed growing up. It wasn't until I have another friend that calls it kissing frogs until you figure out where the prince is. Kissing lots of frogs until you figure out, oh my gosh, that's a thing. That's a opportunity. That's something people do for work. I had no idea, and something can kind of light up. My last question for you is, what's the self-talk that hope will help you kind of cultivate? How do I talk to myself? How do I process the roadblocks, the setbacks, the failures, the rejection through the lens of hope?
Sure. Good question. High hope individuals generally have pretty positive self-talk. That inner dialogue we have with ourselves when I'm working on a problem and something's frustrating. I've reached some kind of obstacle, and so what I tell myself matters. And so high hope individuals generally have fairly positive self-talk. Low hope individuals oftentimes have lower that negative self-talk. And so, example, I'm working on a project and I can't figure out something. Now, do I tell myself, hey, this is hard, but you've figured out things before, right? Last week you
Hmm.
figured out something similar. Hey, you can
Yeah.
do this. Or, well, if I don't know how to do it, I'll call a colleague, call a friend.
Mhm.
Have resources, versus someone who has, maybe you have, there's been one too many rejections.
Yeah.
And so your self-talk has turned negative of, it doesn't matter how many applications I fill out. It doesn't matter how much I try.
Yeah.
I just can't seem to meet this. Why should I keep trying?
Right.
It's too much. I don't think I have what it takes. I wasn't really meant to succeed.
Hmm.
And so learning, how to have a hope mindset, and hope is a thinking process.
Hmm.
And because it's a thinking process, we can learn to be more hopeful.
Hmm.
And that includes that internal dialogue that we have with ourselves that is very key
Yeah.
to meeting our goals. And we can cultivate that. We can be mindful and cultivate that. Other people, the people who know me well,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
know when my self-talk or has turned negative. And so
Yeah.
we need that accountability with other people.
Yeah.
And then just having an awareness of this is where I'm at, but this is where I want to be, and how do I get there? And Vector Accelerator is that key piece to
Mm.
help veterans transitioning into civilian life.
That's fantastic. I know there's folks I'll be listening and watching that are a part of a leadership team of other organizations. And so the idea, and this is what I've been kind of sharing about you, this like lofty idea that there is a way to measure your impact, there is a way to tell that story, and it doesn't have to take, you know, years. I mean, you've kind of been this unicorn that I didn't know existed for doing this kind of work for so many years. I'm like, nah, I just kind of gave up measuring impact, to be honest. So until I found you, and you're like, no, there's a way. You gave me hope about impact analysis. So this is the last question for those kinds of people who are like, yeah, right. Who is this person? Who's this doctor who can help us do that? Like, how do people find you? What's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
Sure. My website is hopewired.com. If you click on there and you scroll to the bottom, you can fill out to find your hope score.
Cool.
And as Scott said, hope is a measurable concept. And if there is something you want to measure, I can help you measure it. It's what I do.
Perfect.
It's my favorite. But yeah, hopewired.com.
Awesome. We'll include all your stuff in the show notes. And Evie, thanks for being a part of this show. And you're, again, in the Hall of Fame of Vector Accelerator. And I'm excited that you and I will be able to connect over the next few years and look at the lives that have been impacted. That is no small thing. So thanks for being a part of this ride.
Well, thank you for today. And it's my honor to get to partner with Vector Accelerator.
Awesome.
Thanks.